So what should we talk about? You had a question?
No.
No?
I mean
He
about the
said-
book.
Yeah, and what did he say?
He was going over the 3 ways to be religious.
Okay, I missed that part.
You did?
What is?
I need my phone for it. Is that okay? Make it-
Tell me what stayed with you.
Well, I don't.
Otherwise-
I'm trying to remember. So like, there's 3 stages of being religious. Like, because he talks about the levels of
Mhm.
life. One's like being materialistic or something. The second one
Acha,
is.
I see what you're saying.
The
Maybe
second-
not from. I remember what he said about that. We're talking about Soren Kierkegaard. I've been reading Soren Kierkegaard, his writings, and they're very beautiful. It's like pointing in a very different expression, but pointing to the same truth. So what he's talking about really is probably in this case he's saying how to be free from despair, how to be free from the anxiety of existence. And he's saying first is to value that which is aesthetic. So the aesthetic phase, so you find something which is beautiful and involve yourself in that way. And then you find a way to be like religious or follow the right principles, follow religion. And then really is to follow the way of the heart. I don't know what term he has given, but
It's like in the Veda, no? Like it starts with
Yeah,
discipline,
yeah.
but the end is like
correct.
guru tradition.
The Vedas at the end have the Vedanta, Vedanta. And the Vedanta is the Upanishads, the end of the Vedas, which are pointing to this. So the hope, of course, there is that you go through all the steps, and I'm doing this like a puja. If you're wondering what this is, take the ghee and put it in the puja. So you do all those steps and things like that, and you come to a point where you don't need an external sort of movement to bring you to the way of the heart or the insight from the heart. So at the end, the pointings which are available can only be fathomed in the heart. They cannot be intellectualized, they cannot be conceptualized. And that in a way is the way of satsang as well. Because coming to satsang is to come to the way of the heart. Come to the way of the heart. Where and in a way life, although outwardly may continue to seem the same, outwardly may continue to see the same, but inwardly is completely different. Nobody can compare the two lives. The life of Ananta before I met Guruji and the life of Ananta after I met Guruji is outwardly same. Family, work, all that is there. But I can't compare it because the way of life was completely head driven, understanding driven, intellect driven. In fact, I used to pride myself in terms of what I thought was my intellectual capacity, my scientific temperament, and my capacity to pick up knowledge and things. And then completely switched. And here at least, and it doesn't have to be that way. There was like a 3-4 month period where I just wanted to sit in the room. I just wanted to sit. So I was getting used to a new way of life, which is not driven by the head, which is not driven by the notions, the knowledge which is available there. So satsang really is an invitation or a call. Warm fast. To AC on in a bit. So we come to an environment which hopefully is conducive to the entirety of our life changing, and I'm provisionally using the word inwardly, That's what is happening. It is not a new compartment that you can create in your head, like a better compartment, a more elevated form of knowledge that can then give you the right principles and values from where to live. It is like shifting to a new house. Like shifting to a new house. You used to live in a particular house, and this house has the outer fence and gate and garden, all of that may be the same. But inside the house, it seems completely different. So although outwardly chopping wood, fetching water, and that may continue to happen, that is fine. But nobody can really say that after coming to this intuitive insight about who I really am, their life has stayed the same. They may be talking about the external. Here life is unrecognizable. From being conceptually driven, from being duality driven, to the end of duality is like, I could say you could call this as two lives. We look at the narrative before Guruji and after Guruji. It's two lives. They cannot recognize that one as any form of reality of myself. This seems like some sort of a dream that passed. So coming to satsang in a way is that kind of radical shift. But what happens is that while we're still in the compartment of the head, then the head will say, okay, what is the life change? So he's saying it's a complete shift. How can I do it? You see? Okay, he's wearing red kurta, so can I wear it? He says, you see all the time, so can I say you see? What is that? You see? What is it that I can replicate in that way so that I can sort of be like that? But really it's not like that. Nothing to do with that. It is, what is your reference point for anything true? So what is the reference point for anything true? If you come to satsang, we call satsang the company of the truth. So with what benchmark, what is the reference point that we will use to determine the truthiness of anything? What is the truthiness of life?
It's the constancy. The constancy of earlier we mistook the changing for ourselves, identified with the changing objects. Now it's you identifying with the stillness, and so it changes everything.
So very beautiful, very good. But what tells us that now we must move from the moving, from the ephemeral, from the temporal, to that which is constant?
Because you recognize the constant within yourself. I mean, because you recognize that, and it's not going. I mean, it's not shaking because the mind says.
Yes.
That,
Okay, you've taken a massive leap there, which is beautiful, but I want to zero in on that point. Now, the instrument with which that recognition can happen within ourselves, as you said, you see, that then has got credibility with you, isn't it? I shift out of the changeful and into the unchanging because of the recognition that I had inwardly. You see? But that which is, okay, if I'm going too fast, so that which is interpreting the changeful is a completely different instrument from that which is recognizing the changeless. Is it or is it not? This is worth finding out for it. Otherwise, if you feel that, okay, now I recognize man, woman, you see, and that will change. You see, everything in front will change. So that's a interpretive process which can happen with one instrument. And then you say, okay, now that itself starts saying, all this is changing, all this is changing. I recognize the changeless within myself. Are we still there?
No, I
Are
mean,
we
I'm
still,
still in
you see, are we still here?
yeah.
Not here. No, because that which is interpreting this and concluding notions about present experience is not the same instrument which is recognizing the changeless. Okay? That is spirituality 101, the fundamental. And wrong spirituality, if there is such a thing, is to continue in there with spiritual notions. You see, now I have spiritual ideas. And this is, so this switchover in the play of the realm, in the play of the world, seems very difficult. Yeah. And that is why, in a sense, that it is helpful if you have like a role model who comes in front of us and says, no, it is not impossible. I can tell you, you see, it is possible and it has happened here. You see? Just like, you know this, the 4-minute mile? The 4-minute mile, for many, many years, it was considered that the 4-minute mile is impossible to do in the human experience. Like no human to run a sorry about the mumbling, the mile to run in 4 minutes was considered impossible to do. You see, everybody felt like it's just not possible. So people would stop at 4 dot something something 000 4 something something. Then along came this guy Bruce Jenner, if I'm getting the name right, who ran the mile in under 4 minutes. And he's an amateur runner, Oxford or some university. He did it. And after that, everybody, just every runner was just like, foam. It wasn't a barrier anymore. You see? And that in a way is the role that the Guru plays. Because we need somebody to come and show us it's possible. You see? Because the doubting mind is full of all kinds of, but what about this? What about this? You see? And to read it in a book, you see, even to meet like this can be so full of doubt, but to read it in a book then can seem completely fictionalized. How can we really tell? Is it even possible? How about if it's so rare that it can happen only for Bhagwan and Maharaj and people like that? So all the fear, all the doubt. When you meet someone who tells you, but it is possible to live in the way of the heart, that is much more compelling than to read it out of a book. And that is maybe the only role that the master plays, to reassure you of the possibility of a life, you see, of a life in this way. So the rest, in a way, you have to do. I cannot force consciousness playing as whatever you call yourself to switch over from head to heart. I can only say that it's nice here. Try it. It's nice here. Try it. And then hopefully that some of you get inspired by that invitation to follow. In spite of all the fears and doubts and but what about this? What about this? What about this? Which is all in the realm of the changing. So within the Vedantic sages suggested that don't be so attached to the changeful. It is to really short circuit the mind in some way. Short circuit the mind, because the mind will only raise objections about that which is changeful. It can't really comment on the changeless. So in one massive leap, Jyotima took us from there to there, and I'm still expanding on the point that she went. So we may at best recognize in our head that something is not working somewhere. Something is not working somewhere, something is wrong somewhere. But the head does not have the capacity to recognize that which is always known intuitively. So the beauty of self-recognition is that not just are you recognizing the self, you're also recognizing that this recognition is happening in a completely new, unique way. And at the same time, it is recognized that this new, unique way is showing me that which has always been here. So, what is the conundrum? What is the contradiction in that? So, although it may seem new and unique, you also recognize that it has always been this way. So, the heart instrument which you're using, the intuitive insight which you're using, is not showing you things moment to moment. It is instantly showing you your eternal nature. It is not subject to time. Are we becoming too subtle too soon? So, when you use sight, for example, you can observe what sight is showing you about. You can observe what sight is showing you about the nature of your environment right there and then. But you cannot conclude on the basis of sight that it will always be this way. Sight does not have that capacity. No? In fact, you may conclude conceptually that this is going to change because that is my inductive reasoning. You see, it has always changed. Day always becomes night. You see, this room always changes, it becomes my house. In the object of perception are constantly changing. You see, so sight can only show you for the moment. You see, but your heart shows you the eternal. What a beautiful instrument. Because what you recognize with your heart is not bound by time. It is not bound by even this lifetime or a million lifetimes or even the life of the universe. All of these things are unimportant, irrelevant to what you are finding. Nobody has the darshan of their holy presence or even that recognition of the awareness that is aware of even that and says, that is just there for this time, so I can say only about now. What you recognize is that it always is like that. So when Guruji says, was it born? Can it die? Mostly everyone is able to say no. And of course my hope is that at least in that moment they're using their heart intelligence to answer no. It is just a conceptual thing, no, because we know it doesn't die. Not like that. So really coming to satsang is to come to the way of the heart. And again, to recap for some of you that came later, although externally it may be almost impossible to tell the difference, inwardly it's a completely different life. And that is why the word habit is useful. We are in the habit of living a certain way. Living a certain way primarily being relying on the mind to tell us what is what. Now we cannot do that anymore. Or we realize that it is not telling us the truth of what we are. So there's a switch to the heart. And that switch, the master is here to show you that that switch is safe. You can easily press the switch. Otherwise there is always some fear about it. So coming to satsang is not like coming to some spiritual teaching session. Because it is not about teaching you anything. Not about adding a new compartment in your head, saying, I'm giving you better knowledge. I'm going to give you some incredible knowledge which is unquestionable. Here, that cannot happen because the instrument itself is limited. Therefore, every philosophy, every teaching, everything is contradicted, is debated, all of that. But if you are reassured about following the way of your intuitive insight, then you yourself are seeing. Once you look down and you spot that the sun is rising, you see, that which seemed like the most absurd thing if it was just told in a perceptual or conceptual way. But once you see it, it's just like, okay. In the same way, once you taste the fruits of your heart, you cannot really go back fully. You cannot really go back fully because that timeless taste, in a way, is recognized and it stays with you. The mind, of course, will play its war games and guerrilla warfare and come, everything. Don't look there, that's dangerous. That's dangerous. You can't live like that. So this is the complaints that will come from the mind, the doubt and the fear. You see, because the nature of the mind in this lila is going to fall on someone. The nature of the lila is to, the nature of the mind in this lila is to dominate, is to own. It wants to be the soul. It wants to be the best friend. It wants to be the king. Doesn't want to be in second place. And as you experience this way of the heart, your life is the sharing of the way of the heart. As you experience this way of the heart, your life itself becomes the sharing of the way of the heart. That is why you don't need a qualification. You don't need a certification. You see? Not even from the master, you see, to tell you that you can share this way. Because your life itself becomes a sharing. Your life itself becomes a sharing. So, although traditionally speaking it is like the done thing or respectful or whatever to take the master's blessing, blessing is always good to take, but really the sharing and the being in the way of the heart are not two different things. The being in the way of this intuitive life is the sharing of it. We don't have to wait for formal environments. We don't have to wait for enlightenment. Okay? You don't have to wait for conviction. It's nothing to do with any of that. So this is it. Anybody who feels that they live from the heart is naturally going to share that way. Just like all of us living in the mind are also sharing as the way of the mind. Almost 7 million people are sharing the way of the mind. And that seems to be the predominant way to share ourselves in today's world. You see? But who knows?
Can I just say
either teaching love or teaching fear, depending on
Yes.
believe or state. I can't remember exactly the words, but
Exactly. I feel the same way that we all teaching something. See? We are either teaching the way of the mind or we are teaching the way of the heart. So if you're learning this new way coming into satsang, and what is the new way? Just to clarify, and that is where the question started. Where do we go for truth? Where do we go for truth? That switches, and once that switches, in our inner life, everything switches. Now the funny thing is, because of the popularity of the headful way, it can seem like there is no other way to live. For most people, it can feel like there is no other way to live. Like the idea of living intuitively or living from the knowing of the heart seems like a absurd, romantic sort of silliness. That's the way I used to look at it. When I was not into God at all, then I would read some Rumi or something somewhere. All this, like, even in India we have the Shero Shairi and things like that. It seemed like some absurd romanticism, some sort of silliness like that. But really, whatever the expression may be that way, it is about the switching over to the reliance for knowledge being the mind, to the switching over to your heart, your being, your presence, the divinity within you. So who knows that a spark is set, a spark is lit in the world, and just like we start to live in this way, and then people automatically come to you and say, what's happened to you? So then you just follow the heart, and the heart will notice if there is enough resonance to have that conversation, to have that, and doesn't even have to be a conversation. The presence speaks. Like when I sat in front of my master, I wasn't really paying attention to what he was saying. I was just like, and by the way, he did tell me though that to know messes everything up. He did say those words. When I look at the recording, I remember them. But so we may have experiences like that which blow us out of this. We call, like even in the world, we call them mind-blowing experiences. Mind-blowing experiences. And everybody says, "Oh, I had a mind-blowing experience. It was so bad." That sounds like a contradiction. So you had a mind-blowing experience in the sense, what are you saying? That my mind was quiet. I had no interpretation left from the mind, no judgment left of the moment, nothing left in the moment which I could conclude, and it was the best time. Many are looking to those mind-blowing experiences through substances. Many are looking to find those mind-blowing experiences through substances, through abusing substances. But it is not needed to do that. You can have a mind-blowing life. You see, a mind-blown life by living in your heart. All it takes is complete trust. And that's not difficult for you. The mind may say it is very difficult. And saying all it means is complete trust, although I realize it may sound contradictory. Because without that complete trust, mind will come and sell you some story about something, some nonsense about something, and you're and then the pull of the heart has already got you. Has already got you. You've tasted this. Now, in what time, how long will it take for that magnetism to really pull you completely in? That we cannot predict. You see, and that is completely the freedom of consciousness to play how it chooses to play. You see? But it is a strong feeling here that those who taste this, who taste it consciously, I am using the word consciously, I'll elaborate on that, who taste it consciously cannot really revert back fully. It's like you travel to a different country and you tasted a beautiful food. Even that will not leave you. It stays with you. But how much of that is done where we want to play as if we are somebody and we want to do whatever the aspirations of the mind may be. You see, how long all that fire will take to burn out, that we don't really know, we can't really predict. And whether there seems to be a period of trying to juggle like that till we become tired of that. You see, why juggle both these? This one is enough. You see? And to come to the realization of which one is enough. You see, so all these may seem like in the outer play like a temporal journey. And yet the beauty of it is that your heart recognition is never in time. You never recognize your presence and say presence seems like 3 minutes old. Because I started looking 3 minutes ago. Nobody has done that. You look at presence and you can only look at presence in the heart. You see? Nobody said, oh, my Atma seemed like it's a fresh one. Like just like only 200 years or something. You come to the being and say, time is nothing for it. Time is nothing for it. I ask you, are you aware now? You recognize this awareness. You see? And nobody really, unless we're being mental about it, can say, this awareness is here for now. That only we can say about the content of the senses. So the eternal is impossible in the head, and the changeful is impossible in the heart. Yet, the beauty of this play, it can seem like you will take time to go from head to heart. You can only do it now. And yet, the full diving in, full submerging can seem in the outer play of your life as if it takes time. Like I even said that after meeting Guruji, I sat 3-4 months in a room, apparently outwardly looking very depressed. So my family used to say, is everything okay? Sab theek hai kya? Parishani? Are you depressed? Can't you see the happiness? So, although in that way some playful settling in may happen into the new way, new source of truth. But if you can do, you can only do it moment to moment.
What is that? You can do it.
If you still feel like you can do, then you can do it only in the moment. You cannot say, I will. for the next 3 days. Because to come to the heart instantly is to come to the end of time anyway. So, whether we like it or not, we are sharing our way of life. Naturally, somebody decides, I'm going to live from my nose. No? And just like that. Then they're sharing that. They're going to share it even if they decide not to speak. See, people will make out just by looking at them. They've decided to live by the nose. You see?
Do you think you speak about the hypnosis of mind? How is it?
So, really better than speaking about it is for us to observe. So, wait for your thought to come. Wait for your thoughts to come, even if it takes few minutes. The thing with this experiment is the more you become open to thought, the more they retreat. So as they come, you notice that they have two sort of magnetism. A dual pronged magnetism. One is the attractive nature of some thoughts to your attention. Some are just you can't even tell what they're saying. Yeah, like that. So very meek and thoughts which are not really attractive to our attention. Then the thoughts that you're able to decode, like the message, my mind is saying, my mind is saying, like you were saying the other day, my mind is asking so many questions. You see? So that means that at least they have that much magnetism that they get your attention. You see? Most spiritual sadhana is about trying to break up that chain of attention to what the thought is saying. I don't follow that process at all. I'm like, okay, let it get your attention. You see? Then, based on the theme and the topic of the thought, it also has a gravitational pull or a magnetic pull to your belief. Okay? Most have never noticed this capacity within consciousness. Okay? Most feel like giving attention itself is to give belief. But it is not true. The consciousness has varied set of capacity. It has light, it has sound, it has all these things which are beyond light and sound. You see, it has emotion, it has imagination, memory, all of these things it has. You see? So when it plays with thought, it has the power to give attention, therefore then thought can be perceived. Although you may be confused about whether it is sight or taste or hearing or in what way it is perceived. And also it has the capacity to give it belief or to not give it belief. You see? So it is the second capacity which here I feel dropped away, and therefore I can lead in that way with authority. So that capacity to take the representations of reality which are coming from the head, to not take them to be real because I see that my seeing is much more clear, you see, is to drop the belief. You see? So if a thought came and said, you're sitting on a camel, what will happen? No, that's it. So that is why insight is very helpful as a discarding of belief from thought, because the thought is proposing you to be what? It's proposing you are Anup, there's Anup there. Anup means sort of khichdi of the body and the mind and belief system, and all of that is Anup. No thought really even says you are just this body. No? The thought itself will say you need mental peace, which is not about the body. The thought itself will say my mind is too active. You see? So it is proposing an existence of a limited being which is like a crazy soup of the body, the mind, the emotions, the relationships, the ownership of what you have, your bank account, your job. All of this is one strange soup, which it is referring to as you. So when you ask the question, if that question takes hold, who am I? Not looking. I am not this body. I am aware of the body. It is not aware of me. Okay? I am not my thoughts. I am aware of my thoughts. They are not aware of me. Then you start looking in this way. Then you notice that there comes a limit to what you can conceptualize and perceive. You reach a limit of what you can conceptualize and perceive. So that is the end of the seeming process of niti niti. Not this, not this, not this, not this. Okay? But it is, and although most may think you come to a blank, or it doesn't lead anywhere after that, you see, they are just talking about what's happening in the head. But what you recognize still is that you are witnessing all of this, and that it is you. It is known only intuitively. It cannot be known here. Are you with me? I've gone too fast, is it? Tell me where I lost you.
Until you said the
Yeah.
mind says, okay, this is it, I cannot go any further.
Yes.
After that, I'm not able to.
Yes. Do you exist right now?
Yes.
If the thought said no, would you not know that you existed?
I didn't analyze it. I mean, it's just.
Didn't even have to analyze it.
Yeah.
Is it? So, this knowledge is not based on a thought. It's not based on mental or conceptual knowledge. Is it? Now, that which exists, show me its boundary. Either show me its boundary or its starting point. Any will do.
It's just there.
Where? Yes, but this here is not this room.
With me.
Huh?
It's with me.
Yes. But where is it? When you say here, you're absolutely right. But when the mind's version of that here is a box location within this room, and that box is the body.
Yes.
But that is not your experience. Your experience of that here-ness, in that experience of that beingness, here-ness, are contained the sensations of the body. It is not the body that contains the beingness or the here-ness. In that very here-ness, you see, you experience the sensation of the body. In fact, your attention can only navigate within your beingness. Okay? Attention is not something that you can send out of yourself. See? Therefore, all that you are perceiving, you may not be able to comment on its reality, but you have to admit that you only experience it within yourself. That's a great first step. You may not be able to say whether it is there outside of you or not, whatever that boundary may be. But at least you have to admit that whatever my experience is only experience within myself. Isn't it? So when we say here, all our perception about here is contained within us. But that here itself proposes no boundary. You don't try to squeeze what I'm saying into the head. No? He's like, I don't understand this. I know. You're not meant to. You're not meant to. And if you do understand it, it'll become part of your spiritual encyclopedia. It won't help you anyway. There's no point. I'm just showing you something where I'm just saying that which you can confirm the here-ness of, you cannot find a boundary to. That's all I'm saying. You see? So, if you were to take that a step further, I can tell you that which you can confirm is here but does not have any qualities, objective qualities, that is not in this universe. How can it be in the universe? Everything that is in the universe has at least one quality, no? Isn't it? Like if I say, okay, this cup, where is its location? Is it? So somebody can say on longitude this, latitude this, there is a house, you see, in that house there is a room, and we can plot this in the entirety. You can go to the edge of the universe and somebody can plot its distance from there to this. Yes? Now, how to plot the distance from that to your being? Because if your Atma lives in this universe, then it must have a location. And that is why the mind's obsession with a kind of spirituality which will tell you that your Atma resides in the body. Very popular type of spirituality even in India. It's not that. The boundless, the pure presence is called pure presence because it's empty of attributes. It's empty of all attributes except the being present itself. That's why it may be called the primordial vibration. The primordial vibration. Can you place the location of this primordial vibration? And we make so many implications about things in our head. Like, oh, she said this to me, therefore this is what she said. Oh, but then that means we make so many implications of this, like things in the world. But can you realize the implication of this? That you cannot locate yourself. The implication of that is that you are not contained in this universe. Because everything that is contained in this universe can be found objectively. Every atom, every molecule in this universe can be found objectively. You can't, your being can't. Yeah. So, only in your heart can you find this to be true. Because in your mind proposal, all this is okay, poetic talk, but let's get real. Yeah. So like one child once told me, she said to me very sincerely and with great honesty, she said to me, Ananta or Father, whatever she said, all this is fine, but really, at the end of the day, aren't we all just humans? Isn't this just about human? What? So what is the attempt there? The attempt, you're finding your boundless nature in which the universe comes and goes. You see? But because we have a habit to try and put a personal construct on it. You see? So that is the mind's attempt to own this knowledge by trying to fit it in the person mode. And so then I said, what is the difference between person and human? Same, just a nicer word. Because the person is much maligned in Satsang. The person. And we keep saying, keep chopping. But you might as well have asked, all this is fine. But when push comes to shove, the rubber hits the road. Really, at the end of the day, aren't we at the end just people? No. So that is the way of the mind, to still try and fit everything in the mode of personality. Because the idea in the head is to try and make the non-existent person God. And when it doesn't succeed, then his frustration can make it to the heights of the ego, can make it suicidal or murderous. Sorry if it's not sounding like elegant word, but that is the nature of the mind. And murderous to the extent that the highest teachers of God have always been murdered in some way. at least attempted to be.
Until now, it was more about engaging with the mind to mellow it down. But now, after coming to this satsang and meeting Dr. Gauri, it was more about just dropping the mind, dropping the thoughts. So that's a very radical jump.
According to?
Me, yeah. Yes.
You see? The mind will say, slow and steady wins the race. Make your negative thoughts into positive thoughts. Start to live positively. You see, affirm positive things. And then go from that into the absolute, the Atma or Brahma Gyan. And Brahma Gyan is not a stuff for just people like us who are in the world. You see, these are the propositions of the mind, you see, which itself will say this. Now, you will notice that you will see a lot of these so-called positive thinkers, but when life slaps them around, that positivity is the first to go. You see, in fact, it is a blessing to them that it goes. You see, because if you're sitting over there and you're feeling squeezed, and you're like, no, but I am a happy, glorious person. You see, that is like a worst sort of inner conflict which I wouldn't wish on an enemy. At least then, if you're like have a regular mind, which is like my life is BS, like that, rather than say, no, but I'm happy. It's so convoluted. It's just like, so none of that stuff. Because many of those are like the tactical attempts to come to a happiness through outsmarting the human condition. We feel that we can play chess with the mind. And I love this example where the great psychotherapist, psychologist, whatever, Jung said, what you resist persists. And it's a very beautiful statement. What you resist persists. Now, suppose you came across that knowledge and you're still used to living in the head. What will you do? No, if what I resist persists and my mind is giving me trouble, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to love the mind. Because I'm going to love the mind, and then I'm not resisting it, and then it won't persist. So it'll die out. It'll die that way if I love it. Do you feel like the mind doesn't recognize you're trying to kill it through this make-believe love? So this is the kind of nonsense we get into. I'm going to love the mind to death. We don't really love the mind. We are lying to ourselves and to the mind. And we're trying to pose like, okay, I love you. Yes. I love you. But with one eye, if it is true love, perfect. But what we are doing is, we are keeping one eye open to see, is it dying yet? Is my tactic working? Is my mind troubling me less? Is it losing its power? That is not love. So if you have to love your mind, fully love your mind, then don't wait for it to go. So these games don't work. These tactics don't work. You can't be disingenuous in your own life, to your own self. You see? And many times then we are actually come out fully convoluted about what is really going on. My mind is causing so much suffering, but I love it. So the mind can see through all its tricks, all its own tricks. It's not going to create a mind tactic to kill itself. The problem cannot be resolved at the same level at which it is created. It has to be transcended. And the only transcending that is possible is from the head to the heart. And you go to any spiritual teacher, any culture, any type of expression, even those who are just sitting and singing bhajans, they will say what happens in satsang is you go from head to heart. So the transcending of the cause of separation. There is the transcending the eating of the apple in the Garden of Eden. You see, the apple of judgment, the apple of right and wrong, the apple of me, I want this, what's good for me. You see? That's why it's called the fruit of knowledge. The transcending of the fruit of false knowledge is to come to the true knowledge of the heart. So the mind will say, but that is too, what you may say, what you may mean while saying radical is, but that is too difficult. But actually it is much easier than trying to fix it there. To let go of it. To allow yourself to breathe without being in that Mahabharata of the head. You see, itself is a great relief. The beauty of the way of the heart, that in your heart you always know. Everything that can be known, you know already. For a while you may feel like I don't know because you don't have its translation happening in the head. What beautiful questions you answer in like 2 minutes of starting the invitation. And answer with full honesty. Born, will it die? Is it in space? Is it in time? Can you stop being? Are you aware? Just an instant of insight opens up yourself, or it seems like it opens up ourselves to that which is beyond the universe. In a moment of insight, you can write the Ashtavakra Gita. You don't need more than that. Just in that moment, if you had a magic pencil, capture what this moment is showing. Whole Ashtavakra Gita is over, whole Ripu Gita is over, all the Vedanta is over. Okay. Because what you are discovering is the same as the highest sage. Be that Vashisht or Bhagwan or all the sages. You come to that where true knowledge resides. You come to that where self-knowledge resides, that in self-knowledge all knowledge is contained. So, in the way of the heart there is no struggle, no trying, no effort. If you take, and why I'm saying that? It's not that you beat yourself up and say I'm doing too much effort. No, if you're trying, you've gone in the wrong road. You've gone down the wrong road. In the way of the heart, God is found instantly. The effortful way, the progressive way, and I already talked about progress and how it may seem outside, but if it takes progress and time to see the truth of what you are, then you're using the wrong instruments, or you're trying to juggle too many instruments, or trying to squeeze the insight from one instrument into another instrument. And many times that other instrument could be a perceptual instrument also. Like mostly it is conceptual. Like what did I understand? I'm saying when you check, you are aware now. All true knowledge is available to you. Is it? I can get anything. You see, but what are you auditing? The other instrument. So to try and squeeze that heart into the head, you see, is a struggleful process. But many times you're also trying to squeeze it into like an objective experience. Okay? So what did I see? Everything went right. What is okay? What is that an attempt to? To try and attempt to bring it into a perceptual knowledge, because we still trust perceptual knowledge more than heart knowledge. Okay? So this is very good. Yeah? Many times when people say to me about their sober experiences, there's a bit of a tantrum in that. This sober, because a bit of a tantrum in that, because it's like, it would have been better if there was that bliss that was promised also. My order is missing the bliss. Yeah? It's not in the bill. So, because why does that happen? Because we're so used to this sort of knowledge, perceptual knowledge. It would also maybe have been better if you come to the truth of your awareness, and in your mind you are chanting, Aham Brahman Asmi, Aham Brahman. And you feel like, oh, I must have got something because this chant started on its own. Still relying on conceptual knowledge and perception. Nothing. No frills. Nothing are needed. And what happened after 2 weeks? It went away. What went away? Not the awareness of God. That chanting went away. Or that experience of the bliss went away. Something like that. This is how the mind sets you up for failure. Sets you up for failure. It's like you're coming to the self. But it's saying, come. Let's also participate in this, otherwise he'll forget about us. She'll forget about us. And then we associate that byproduct to be as if it was our true finding, true spirituality. And then everything that has come will go. So when it goes, we say, I had it, but I lost it. How many of you that's happened to? I had it, then I lost it. Not possible.
Sir, how come awakening is irreversible for you and reversible for us?
I don't know about that. Like whether it is. Well, yeah. So thank you. So the question of how you can come to a true insight about yourself, and seemingly not switch out of that mode of knowledge, whereas others may switch out of that mode of knowledge. And I don't know. Maybe in that 3-4 months something was like that, like this. But really, that answer I don't have. Like I don't know. I can just say that this works. Try it, and I don't see the difficulty in trying it. So whether it will stabilize now as I'm pointing you to it, or this thing, and maybe the second statement, the second part of what I was saying, has to do something with that. Whereas I want to invite like a full trust, because the mind can only push the buttons of where it can create doubt. Create doubt. So I see that before I went to Guruji, it is not as if the being was not recognized. The being was recognized, all of that, and yet it seemed difficult. I seemed lost, really lost. But after I went there, so what that switch was, but I can just keep pointing to this in the hope that this same source of self-knowledge, that same source of that energetic presence, which hopefully all of you can feel coming here, will also make that happen. It couldn't just be doing it just for kicks or something.
So nice, because I'm just talking to somebody yesterday. I was just contemplating this. What guarantees that switch can't save for you when you see that they are the same being, but there's no answer to this.
There's no. So that's why Bhagavan would say grace.
Yeah.
You see? But grace is also saying, I don't.
Yeah.
Like, it is my feeling and it is my blessing that if you want this with your full power, with whatever power you think you have, want it with the fullness of it. It is my blessing and it is my feeling that it cannot be denied to you.
I feel like also when it doesn't matter anymore, it doesn't matter if it's like irreversible or not. Like something just happens. Like so you have everyone here has the teaching and the words and the ability and also the recognition. So just that, like when that's not from them, it doesn't really matter if you come to your mind.
That's very important as well because to be honest, can I say that in this life it's irreversible? I can't say. And I've been saying this for 10 years. That tomorrow morning I may wake up fully identified. So if you were to be inductive about it and say, okay, the sun always rises from the east as far as I've seen. So if you were to become inductive about it for the last 10, 11 years, then you notice and say, okay, that is not happening. So you may say, it may not happen. But can I really say? I cannot say. I cannot say that the consciousness, the being that is playing here, will never identify with the identity. And not that it's 100% during any day anyway. So somebody says, oh, but so what are the things which can still push buttons? Your sangha, your children, your family, these kind of things. So you can momentary. Remember, I always used to say, don't worry about 100%, because that 100% itself will come and oppress you and make you in a position of becoming too judgmental about your own inside.
What is the 100% you mentioned?
It's the 100% free from identification. And that 100%, all sages, all prophets, everyone has given us at least one instance where in this human play they got identified also. So Ram cried when Sita was taken. Now we'll say that was part of his Leela, of course. But what is the point of playing that Leela? To show us that even the Lord himself playing the human role, when the buttons are pushed, will have these moments of things happening, identification happening. Jesus said for a moment, you see, oh Father, have you forsaken me? Before quickly coming back to saying forgive them, for they know not what they do.
There was another with Jesus, which is also very deep. And he was like, he know that they will come and they will catch.
Yes.
And she was praying, Father,
Yes.
don't leave to.
Correct.
I want to.
Just run away, don't get caught.
This glass
yes.
of milk.
Yes.
But your wish, it was kind of, it was very powerful.
Yes.
He was, as I read it, he was sweating blood because something wanted to run in him, but he was like going anywhere. That was a really powerful kind of teaching for us that the human nature is like really, because he knew what will happen. And it was like way better, and he was praying for the Lord to.
And it's great satsang for the disciples also. There is his 12 closest friends. One felt he was going too far, so he told the Romans about him, or the chief priests of the Jews. One stayed with him even while he was being crucified, and one actually disowned him when he was going to be arrested. He said, do you know this man? No, I don't. all shades of the human play are available to us. If you dig deeply into any scripture, any religion, you can find that all these aspects have been pointed out. It is good to have an environment of satsang where we discuss all of that, because just reading it mentally can lead to a lot of fresh confusion also. Bring all of that in the light of your own heart. That is where you truly that is when you truly see what is being pointed to. Otherwise, commentaries pe commentaries pe commentaries. We have one cupboard full of commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita. It is helpful to some level, because then you can read the commentary which appeals most to your temperament. You still can't know for certain that if I'm reading according to my temperament, I'm not feeding it more to my mind. Maybe you need to read something completely opposed to your temperament. Not that that always works also. But we cannot say. Only a heart can guide us about these things. We come to a point where we realize that faith is the higher knowledge than the intellect. That is trust. That is trust. We come to a point where we recognize that our faith is the higher knowledge than our intellect. Otherwise, how to follow a master? Impossible. Impossible to follow any master, even the books you read about any master. Full of contradiction, one day like this, one day like that, one day left, one day right, one day do this, one day don't do that ever. Impossible. See, if you're trying to systemize it, if you're trying to create a logical system of how to become free, it's not possible. No matter how much you play if the real game you have to play is football, how much cricket you have to play football? It's an absurd thing, no? And that is what we try to do, because those are the tools we are comfortable with. Because we are comfortable with the tools of perception and mind, we like, if I can just play it better and better and better and better. You can become the Messi of perception and thinking. Then one day God will come to us in that way. It doesn't happen. It's the wrong game. No matter how much you play, you're not going to get better at the darshan of God through empirical means, through these means of time and space. So how much trust is needed, how much devotion is needed? Whatever trust is needed to, the trust which is more than how much you trust your head. That much trust is enough. And the life of Krishna himself is such a beautiful example of that. Like if you look at this life of the Krishna and you don't include his pointing in the Bhagavad Gita, what have we learned?
What should not be?
It's not even that, because he did, no? So he could not have done that which should not be done. Yeah? So from a ultra ethical, ultra moralistic perspective, you may look at how it played out on the battlefield, and we say, like, I did that and I built up like a antagonism towards Krishna, because I used to feel like, oh, only Ram for me, because Krishna, did you see what all he did in the battle? Is it? But if you had a master like Krishna, not that Ram would not have done it, but unable to rely on any concept of Krishna in your head. No? Like, how can you meet Krishna? You cannot meet him in your head. Impossible. And the instant you want to meet in the heart, any aspect of consciousness with whatever name you want to give it, in instantly available. So it's not about the name or a particular form. Whatever aspect of consciousness you are calling out to come to, you can't even say help, but come to witness your life in some way, is never lost, it's never missing. All the masters, all the sages, all the avatars have left enough in their life that our mind cannot understand. That is their greatest gift to us. Because they are impossible to meet fully through conceptualization. Is your heart talking about time? Is your heart talking about progress? Is your heart talking about how should I keep this? Is your heart telling you that you cannot run your responsibilities? Is your heart saying you have to run away from life? The heart is not saying any of this. The guidance of the heart, if it is perceived in any way, serves as reassurance to rely on the truth. All these sporting metaphors are coming. The World Cup is starting soon. Cricket World Cup is starting soon. Also football is also starting soon. I was just going to say that how far must you hit the six for it to be counted as a goal? This simple thing we can understand that we cannot understand. Because that is the wrong play, wrong game.
Remember Vedanta, there used to be a metaphor like the best eyes can't help.
Yes.
Finish. I mean,
That's a good one.
I can't hear.
The best I am kind. The best.
I see.
Full. No. No half measures. No hedging your bets. No 50% God and 50% mind. Inwardly. What's the biggest fear? What do you have to lose? Just observe for yourself. Don't have to expose. Like all the sages have also told us. Even Guruji said there used to be a fear coming, you'll become a hunchback beggar on the streets of Brixton if you keep going on this path. Didn't happen. Nobody comes to this and regrets it. Nobody has said, I'm living from my heart, I'm living for the truth. But it was much better living in the mind. Oh man, I miss those days. Yeah, I look back at that life, whatever memory remains of that life, it just feels like slavery. It just feels like this, that. Like a mental oppression. Nobody is freed from those chains and says, I want them back.
My fear is I would be thrown out of the house.
Out of the house. I met your wife. I don't feel like.
You're not married to her.
This is true. This is But you're married to Varsha.
That's my main version.
मेघ बहुत बरसा. Family, children, work, money, things, body. These are the 3-4 of the main variables.
I think there will always be the top one.
And if you remove that, there will be a second one which will become. There will always be a top one. And if you get rid of that, there will be something which is on top.
It's like a stack. I would suggest to you that allow that to be God's problem or Guru's problem. What will happen as a result of your living with God, let that be God's problem. That is why it is a leap of faith. Because if you say, what is the guarantee? No guarantees. अब इतना तो करना पड़ेगा. Everything else is available on a platter. If you want a contract, even for a guarantee that nothing should change, then cannot be.
But as if life is giving you that guarantee anyway.
Any?
I mean, you don't have that guarantee. Who has that? Nobody has.
Yeah, but the mind believes.
Exactly.
It's a kind of, because you always know that everything is over. If you take granted that tomorrow it will be like that's today.
The mind is in the pose, constantly in the pose of like that. No, I'm holding everything up. I'm holding everything up. My work, my family. See, I'm holding it. Actually, who's holding it up?
Yeah, but
The
it
same
takes time
story
to be able to realize that it is like God is holding everything, but until you realize that this is true, it takes.
This is the whole game. This is the whole game, the development of trust.
That nothing is in your hand at all.
The development of trust, again I'm saying that perceivably may seem like it's a process in time. You see? But your only choice is to trust fully right now. You cannot half trust now. Like I'll trust God, but try to do half trust. You can't do it. There's no pose like. It'll just seem awkward, like a half sneeze. You can only trust. Then when you're making a report card, you may later say, okay now, for in the year 2022, I trusted 30% of the time. Something. But in the moment, you can only trust fully.
One thing that mind tells me recently, like, you want to avoid your work, so you're running to Satsang.
Yeah. I also run from my work and come. It's basically all a big avoidance. Some words are framed only to sound like there is a sin in them. Avoidance. Love it. Avoid. Best if you avoid avoidance. If it's so compelling. Can you see in the framing of it itself? It's like avoidance. So the minute you hear avoidance, oh, it's a bad thing to do. But nothing is inherently good or bad. Nothing is inherently. So when we hear like responsibility, automatically sound like a good thing. Avoidance. What am I? Don't allow your life to be constrained in these small prisons. Okay? These are prisons, word prisons. You are in avoidance. How can meeting God be an avoidance? In fact, in the world, that is the biggest fear. You see? to have the naked darshan of something which is so beyond human conceptualization is what most of us are running from. We fear it. Even in the recognition of it, many times the mind fights and says, but it's like limbo. I don't want this. I wanted some nice feeling. What are we really running from the most? Looking at ourselves with full honesty. We are really running from that. Everybody is running from that. Most cannot spend 10 minutes in a room alone. 10 minutes. There is an experiment like that. So many of you are new, you haven't heard this experiment. Blank room, white walls, nothing to give attention to. So they put somebody inside that room and they've done this experiment like scientifically. So, and there's a small bell next to you, but there's no idea about what it does, what will happen. So you're sitting. It doesn't sound so bad. You're sitting. What happens in the first 10 minutes? Usually the person has rung the bell without knowing what is the bell for. What happens when you ring the bell? Proper electric shocks. Proper also, no? Not like tame. So proper electric shock. This is bad news. Never good news. Sitting. What do you feel happens about an hour later? Most people, they ring the bell again. Because the need to have an experience of something feels better than just being by themselves. This is the human condition today. So we are in avoidance of ourselves. We are running with all our might away from ourselves.
This is the Leela.
This is the Leela. This is Maya.
I recollect from scriptures also, inherently no karma is bad or good.
Yes. Inherently no karma is bad or good. And there are many examples. The surgeon is cutting, doing good. The action is cutting. So it's not inherent in the action itself. So when the mind proposes these kind of things, either just fully discard them or dive deeply into it. Like, what am I most in avoidance of? Let me face that. We'll come to the same point. The problem is the half intellect. Like, if you apply your full intellect, like even Descartes, he said, I'm going to, using the power of reason, I'm going to come to a seeing of what cannot be doubted. And in that process, it led him to the neti. The world can be doubted because it could be a dream, or because he was Christian, he said, maybe the devil has me, so he's making me hallucinate. The world could be made up. I can doubt this world. He was trying to see where can he come to that is not doubtable. The world is doubtable, the body is doubtable, all same. Then he comes to what actually my hope is that was not an inference, but when it was shared, came across as an inference, which is cogito ergo sum. Which he was not saying. What we think that he was saying that he was saying that I think, therefore I am. So what we conclude from that is that we think he was saying his thinking makes his being, but that's not what he was saying. He was saying that to even think, I have to exist. To be aware of my thought, I need to exist. Therefore I can conclude I am.
Completely different.
To even to even have a doubt, proves my existence because I am aware of the thought of doubt. You see, even to be deluded, I have to exist to have the thought of delusion. That's what he was trying to say. No, look at this. The highest philosopher there, you see, said his being is made up of his thinking. He's saying his being is dependent. He's not saying that. So anyone who truly with full integrity dives into the search for the truth has to have at least a moment of insight about it. Is my hope. But when it becomes just a sort of like intellect which we're just not even like, oh, this whole world is also doubtable. You see? Then tomorrow you get 10 lakhs in the mail. Like, okay, I like this world. And then next day, you spent it all on some nonsense thing. Then you're like, oh, this world. So that is what I mean by half intellect. So if you take on an endeavor, then fully. Dedicate your full heart. This half-hearted little bit.
Descartes came very, very close to them, but missed whole, very slight.
Well, also what happened is that, with that first inference, cogito ergo sum, then he inferred a lot of things about the existence of God and then the proofs of God, all of that stuff. But we don't know how much of that was because of the fear to his life. Because anything which could, in those days, would stand away from the pointing of the church, you could be easily, right? So how much of that was based on just wanting to live a bit more, and how much of that was can't really see.
I am therefore I think.
Huh?
I am therefore I think.
Yeah, but even
I
in,
think,
if you
therefore
look,
I am.
this is exactly what I was saying. It's not what he was saying that he was not saying that his thinking makes his being. That is, his being is dependent on his thinking. He was not saying that. He was saying that what is now not doubtable is that if there are doubting thoughts or not doubting thoughts, I am thinking. That much is undeniable. So for me to be thinking, I have to exist. I cannot have existed, you see, and then still be thinking. That's what he's trying to say. You get it? So this is the subtle difference which most of us don't get in India, because we feel like, how dumb was that? He spent his whole life on this, what he call meditations, and at the end he's just saying, his thinking makes his being. I think, therefore I am. Actually, it is I am, therefore I think. But he was saying the same thing. He's saying I can infer that my being is undoubtable, because whether it is doubting thoughts or true thoughts, whether it is false thoughts or true thoughts, I have to be there to experience them. So this is what he was trying to say. And I wish I could clear up this fallacy for everyone, because we most of us have it. Like as we hear this, and I don't know how it sounds in the original. He said cogito ergo sum. I don't know how it sounds, but in this, I think, therefore I am. It can sound like this, like what he was saying just now, Ravi. That what he was implying is that his thinking leads to his being. Actually, his being leads to him thinking. But he was saying that my being, I am confirming the presence of my being because I cannot deny my thinking, even if the thinking is wrong or right.
meditate, is the one continuous problem comes, mind being silent. It acts as being silent. Then I look for silence from the heart, which be open space. There, is it the
So,
silence would-
so give me more details. So you're meditating,
Yes.
and then you're not perceiving a thought, or you are perceiving a thought.
I will not proceed within few minutes or seconds. I will reach silence.
Ah.
But I perceive the silence,
Yes.
mind being silent.
No, you perceive it as mind being silent, or there's a judgment from the mind that the mind is being
It's a judgment.
from the mind as a thought.
Not as a thought, probably.
The mind is only a bundle of thoughts. That is good. We're looking together. It's good. So, quiet. Then, what exactly is the nature of the perception that you're having?
There is a belief.
Belief
Silence.
needs,
The silence.
like, can you have a belief without a thought?
No, brother.
Even prior beliefs? Like, can you bring a prior belief into the presence of the moment without the glue of a thought believed in now? Not possible. Okay, so no matter how much we believed in the past and what we believed, as we are open in this moment, all that is gone. You see? But we pull at one leaf, like I keep saying, of the tree of conditioning, and it seems like the whole system is back, the whole tree comes back. You see? And that pulling is to believe that thought which is perceived. Hmm? So what, as you try now, what did you notice? Take your time, take your time.
Perceive silence.
Yes, but it's uninterpreted as silence. Is there an interpretation of it as noise or silence inherent in the perception itself? Try, you can try. Is the meaning that this is silence or this is noise, is that inherent in the perception or the absence of perception?
Absence of perception seems to be like silence, but something inside feeling it's not the silence of the heart.
Mm. It's like just like a dark empty space, like that? Or blank space.
It's quietness.
Yes. Now you don't have to actually worry about the silence of the heart, in the sense that you don't have to make this silence into some silence. You're experiencing silence. There is nothing to trouble yourself with. It's quite nice. There's nothing troublesome. It's all fine. So that's quite fine.
I don't have any problem also. Just to clarify that doubt,
Yes.
that mind is acting.
Yes.
It's like a silent. Again, it comes back. So just
Yes. If it is the absence of thought, then it is the no mind anyway. The mind cannot act as if it is the no mind. Maybe it is just like, now no point bothering him because he's not going to listen. So the mind moves from constant warfare into guerrilla warfare mode. So it just comes opportunistically. Right? When there's something at work, something somewhere, then it's now. So many times you've noticed that. There's nothing to judge, nothing to interpret. It's all fine. So absence of attention and belief into thought, that is the no mind. Now the mind may be troubling you saying, but this is the mind playing as if it is no mind. So that forget about it. It's a very, very simplistic instrument. All it has is thoughts, and even that one thought at a time. That's all. Simplistic in that way. In its deviousness, it's full on. Simplistic in its method. Thought. But in the content of those thoughts, the trickiness of the biggest trickster. I add up the whole package. The life that we can understand has nothing to do with life as it is. That's been the main message of Satsang today. So the life that we can understand has nothing to do with life as it actually is.